Okay, so I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I've followed Cal Newport's philosophy of deleting all social media apps on your phone, and I've been there, done that, but that really hasn't worked for me. And the other side of the spectrum as well, where I have tried to practice the maximum resistance to using any social media apps on my phone for more than, let's say, 15 minutes a day, but even that hasn't worked. But with iOS 14 and the way they have designed the entire infrastructure and the structure of the home screen, which allows for widgets, as well as the app library, I think I've finally created my own way of how I can manage social media apps on my phone and not just spend hours doom scrolling on my phone without any purpose as such. So I've realized two important things in this entire process of, I guess, a few months or years, where I haven't been able to just crack why and how we actually end up using so much of social media on our phone. And those two lessons are really this. First is that going cold turkey won't really work. You may think that if you delete everything from your phone, you'll just be a changed person. I've tried that. The reason that doesn't work is because when you do that, you actually miss out on a lot of important information. In my case, when I did this, I was back in Berkeley and I realized that my social interactions suddenly just went out of the window and I wasn't getting to know about important events, important college-wide events, and so on and so forth. And that really got to me because, well, the entire point of being in college, or one of the most important points of being in college, is to be able to socialize. And if I delete Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter and whatnot from my phone, then how will I even be active socially? So that was one major downside. And that's when I realized that just deleting all your apps from your phone won't work because you'll just end up living under a rock. And that's not the position you want to be in. And the second lesson that I've really learned is that you can try to practice as much resistance as you want to, but if you've read James Clear's Atomic Habits, you would probably know that humans are better at avoiding temptation rather than resisting it. So if you want to avoid eating sugar, let's say, it's better to not have cookies or any sweet stuff around you in your house rather than just have cookies right there and try not to have it, because that's not how the human mind works. And if we know anything about environment design, it's that you have to construct your environment in such a way that even the thought of eating sugar or doing something that you shouldn't be doing really doesn't enter your mind. And that's really the biggest lesson from environment design. So having learned these two things, I've come to three main workflows that are really simple, but I think most people may not know about it because after a lot of struggle, I finally reached this simple set of workflows. And I just wanted to share that about how you can manage social media on your phone without living under a rock. And really, the first thing is to, you would have guessed it already, to not delete your apps, but to completely turn off the notifications. And the reason I say this is because one of the biggest banes of our phones and the instant gratification era is that we're constantly on the lookout for notifications. And if you've watched The Social Dilemma, you would know that anytime your phone gives you a notification, your mind just suddenly gives you a dopamine rush. And that's what you want to crave each time you look at your phone when you're doing something important, and so on and so forth. So therefore, the first biggest thing that you want to do is to turn off your notifications from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, any other social media apps that you find distracting, and to just do that as the very first step. And that is something that I've done. It's super simple. You just need to go into settings, go into notifications, turn off the notifications for all these distracting apps, and that's step one. Really, there's no rocket science to it. Step two is to use Apple's inbuilt screen time. Now, screen time is especially useful if you use it for the right reasons and you are not desensitized to it. Oftentimes what happens is that we set a reminder or we set an alert of screen time for ourselves, but over a period of time we don't realize that we desensitize ourselves to the screen time because we reach a point ultimately that it doesn't matter anymore whether you have spent 15 minutes on your phone, an hour on your phone, or 2 hours on your phone, because you just keep ignoring the notifications that screen time sends you or that you get to know after a day's usage of your phone. So that's the position that you don't want to be in. So therefore, you have to use screen time very sparingly and very restrictively, which really means that you want to set the limit of each of your social media apps to, let's say, 5 minutes. And if you club them all together, screen time basically allocates 5 minutes to all these apps. Now you could spend all of your 5 minutes per day on Facebook. You could divide it up by spending a minute on Facebook, a minute on Twitter, a minute on Instagram, and so on and so forth. And then obviously, if you've crossed the 5 minutes limit, you will get a notification saying that, hey, you have crossed the screen time usage for today. You have 3 options. Either you can use it for 1 more minute, or you can use for 15 more minutes, or you can just ignore screen time for today. Don't click on the third option. What I usually end up doing is that, let's say I want to browse Twitter. So I would just say, remind me in 15 minutes. And just doing that makes me more conscious of the time that I do have remaining. And that's really the entire point of the second principle, that you want to use screen time very restrictively so that it doesn't desensitize you. But at the same time, you're conscious of the fact that you are using your quota. And when you have a restriction, when you have an upper limit on how much you can use social media in a day, you will naturally be more cognizant and more aware so that you don't end up in a position where you've just wasted like an hour on YouTube, maybe just even watching this video. Although I hope that if you're watching this video, you're probably not wasting your time, but that's something to talk about at a later stage. At this stage, what you really want to do in step 2 is to set screen time restrictively and do not get desensitized to it. And the third step that you want to do is to really set more roadblocks and interruptions. If you've watched Tristan Harris's TED Talk, something that I've talked about in a bunch of my previous videos, you would have realized that Tristan talks about interruptions in one of his talks. And he says this:
my phone is a slot machine. Every time I check my phone, I'm playing the slot machine to see, what am I going to get? What am I going to get? Every time I check my email, I'm playing the slot machine to say, what am I going to get? Every time I scroll a news feed, I'm playing the slot machine to see, what am I going to get next, right? And the thing is that, again, knowing exactly how this works, and I'm a designer, I know exactly how the psychology of this works. I know exactly what's going on, but it doesn't leave me with any choice. I still just get sucked into it. So what are we going to do? Because it leaves us with this all or nothing relationship with technology, right? You're either on and you're connected and distracted all the time, or you're off, but then you're wondering, am I missing something important? In other words, you're either distracted or you have fear of missing out.
So what you want to do is that instead of the apps interrupting you, you want to create interruptions for yourself on your phone so that the apps don't take you in. And what I mean by that is using screen time effectively, which was step 2. And the second way you could do that is to put literally all social media apps outside of your view. The good thing about iOS 14 is that you can really remove social media apps as if they're not present and just hide them in the app library. And the reason that works for me is because not having Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so on and so forth on my home screens, on any of my home screens, really forces me to actively look for them, which means that I am proactive in my social media usage, not reactive, which is great because each time I get a notification, well, I don't realize that I have gotten a notification because my notifications are off. Then when I do actively go to Facebook, let's say, I know that there is a roadblock or an interruption or an upper limit set for me, which is 5 minutes. And if I use social media for more than that, then either the guilt conscience will kick in, or I'm just really being dumb using it, knowing fully well that that's something that I shouldn't be doing. And so when the apps are not in your view, you'd have to actively swipe down, you'd have to look for Facebook or Instagram. And that amount of resistance is the entire point of environment design. That you've created your phone environment in such a way that your phone doesn't really affect you, doesn't really get to you. And that's truly amazing and effective. So this is what has worked for me. I know that you can see 4 hours of usage on my phone today, but really most of it was spent for reading and listening to podcasts and stuff like that, which was absolutely different from if you had noticed my phone usage months ago when I wasn't using screen time, when iOS 14 wasn't released, and when I didn't have these 3 simple workflows to manage my social media effectively and not live under a rock. So yeah, that was pretty much it what I had in this video. I really hoped you liked it. Let me know how you feel in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.